So, welcome to my session, Make It with Minibooks. So, a little bit about me first of all. You probably know my name is Claire Seckham. I'm a primary languages teacher and an independent consultant. A lot of the mini books that I'm going to be showing you, you can read more about on my blog, and you can see the blog name there. It's changing-phase.blogspot.com, and there is a tab at the top that you click on that says mini books, and it'll show you all the different kinds, and then if you click on the links, it takes you to the blog posts which have step-by-step instructions. I'll also be showing you some resources that are on my website, like bulb languages. And if you're on Twitter and don't already follow me, then you can see my Twitter name just there. So a little bit more about me. I teach Spanish at the moment for 3 days a week. I have taught primary French in the past as well, and I'm in my 12th year now of primary languages, having taught secondary languages for 14 years. Recently, I've been involved in the new BBC bite-sized content for Spanish and also the BBC bite-sized daily broadcasts, which took place in first lockdown for French and for Spanish. I also took part in Ripple's Future Learn course, and if you haven't already taken that course, I really would recommend it. I also helped out with ASCL's transition toolkit, which I would really recommend for the next few months when you're starting to tell the secondary schools what your year sixes have done. I'm the subject leader for Oak National Academy. And as well as that, I write articles, I speak at conferences, I train teachers, and so on. And of course, something that I do a lot is I find out lots of different kinds of and make mini books and tell you all about them. So, reading and writing in primary languages are sometimes the poor relations of speaking and of listening. And I'm going to be showing you how you can use mini books to encourage reading and independent writing and dictionary skills as well. I'm going to show you the basics, tell you how I've used them, and hopefully it's going to give you lots of ideas that you'll be able to take away and use when you're back at school. So many CPD sessions available to teachers at the moment really focus on the use of new technologies, new apps, social media, and so on. But there are times when you maybe think that technology is fundamental to a successful lesson, but we have to remember really that it is all about teach and not tech. They are just one letter different. A judicious and an appropriate use of technology can really magically enhance your language teaching, but a series of sort of sit down and make a PowerPoint lessons, which are conceived merely to tick a box on the scheme of learning, is ultimately going to do a lot more harm than good. It's all about using new things appropriately, but also keeping an eye on the long term. And we shouldn't use tech just because it's there, but because it's the right solution to a given problem. Now, there was a time, of course, around the Middle Ages when books were new technology. They were given a real boost in 1450 by Gutenberg and his printing press. Now, books may be considered old hat by some, but for me, they will always be magic. Their feel and their smell, and of course, their words will always take me to another place. And you can see just a small selection there of my language bookshelf. So, what are mini books? What can they do for us? Why should we use them? Well, first of all, they're small and they're non-threatening. It's just a small space that children have to write on and fill. Also, they can be very motivating for children because it's something different. I think they've all had tech overload, haven't they, recently? And it's nice to do something with a piece of paper. Also, they're great for displays, something a little bit different to put on the wall. And you can also use them for tailor-made reading materials. If you can't find the exact reading materials that you want, make your own and put them in the form of a mini book. Also, they contribute to the enjoyment of language learning. It's the sort of thing that the children are going to remember after the lesson has finished. And they also enable artistic and also linguistic creativity. They're great for cross-curricular art and design, tick two boxes at the same time. And you can use them to promote intercultural understanding. A bit later on, I'm going to be showing you the Aztec Codex, for example. They can also be used to promote listening and following instructions. There's nothing quite like having to make a mini book to see how well children can follow instructions. And they also promote dexterity and fine motor skills. It's quite interesting, I always find, to see who exactly can use a pair of scissors properly and who can fold paper neatly as well. They, of course, make a really nice change from writing in exercise books. And like I said before, they are a break from all of the tech. So, all this talk then about mini books and how they can help with reading and writing, but what exactly are mini books? Well, this is my own personal definition. A mini book is a short piece of writing in the form of a book or in another format that lends itself to being opened and read. It can be printed or handwritten, and it's usually illustrated or decorated. So that's my own definition of what a mini book is. So let's have a look then at all the different kinds of mini books that you can make, and I'll also give you some ideas for what you can do with them as well. So first of all, there is the basic mini book that you make with one piece of A4 paper. You could make it with other sizes of paper too. And all you need to do is to fold it in half three times, open it out, one cut, and then you have your little pages already made like that. I have a video on my YouTube channel which shows you exactly how to make them. And again, if you look on my blog, there are some instructions for how to make this basic kind of mini book as well. And it's this kind of mini book that I started off with. The very first one I did was this one. I was doing gender and articles, indefinite articles with year three, and also introducing dictionary use. And I wanted some kind of reading material to introduce the subject, something that they could then adapt to make their own version of the story. So I got this particular story from a book of mini books called the American Bilingual Mini Book Series. They were all, as it said, bilingual, so they had Spanish and English side by side. So I took away the English, but I kept their own illustrations. So what we do with this is we make the mini book, we read it together, and then the children adapt it to create their own versions. And for the nouns, they put in something that they have found in the dictionary. So here's an example. This is one year three girl who I think is now something like year 11, called Eva. And she decided that her mini book that she made was going to be all insects. So she raked through our dictionaries for all the insect words that she could find. So on one of them, she's got, I can see a ladybird. And she's also got, I can see a butterfly. Of course, there's lots of other ways that you can use them as well. I've also used them with, this is year four French, when we were doing things that you do in your spare time and saying how well you do them. So we had très bien, bien, and mal, very well, well, and badly. And they were putting it with different activities. And you can see here, this is what one of the boys did. So he's got je nage bien, and je lis très bien. And I always use this one because I love where it says blah as he's reading. You can also do your own pre-printed mini books. So this is one that I use usually with year two at Christmas time. So we read it together and use the pictures, of course, to work out what the words are saying. And then, of course, we make the mini book and they get to color it in and take it home. Now, of course, you can also use many books for reading and for showing understanding, and the children give you some kind of response to demonstrate that understanding. So this one, you have some descriptions of hair and eyes, and a circle which represents the face, and the children have to read the descriptions and draw on the correct hair and the correct face. Now, at the beginning of year four, I do days of the week and the hungry caterpillar. And we concentrate on the repeated elements of the story. So if you're familiar with the Hungry Caterpillar, it's those little pages in the middle that have the holes in. And then we adapt it to make the story of the hungry monster. And of course, the hungry monster's diet is probably a lot more varied than the hungry caterpillar's. It's because he really has quite a healthy diet. So I give each pair of children a different day of the week to write about. And they use the structure on those little pages to write about what the monster ate on that day. And they use their dictionaries to find the vocabulary. They write their sentences on the mini whiteboards. I photograph them and then type them onto this template. And the following week, every child gets a copy of the whole class's work. They love seeing their names on it. We fold it into a mini book, and then they have to use their dictionaries again and illustrate it. So they're reading and understanding. And usually it's at this point that somebody said, "Oh no, I said he ate a million somethings. How am I going to illustrate it?" So they have to be quite creative with their illustrations as well. You can also do non-fiction mini books as well. So, for example, for the 2010 World Cup, this is a mini book that I made. And when I'm doing pre-printed versions of mini books, I make it in Microsoft Publisher. I make nearly all my resources in Microsoft Publisher. And so I have this template worked out, and it has already got all the rotations built in. And also you can see it's got the dotted line there, which is where they cut. Now, variation on a theme. This is the Pocketbook, so called because each page has a pocket on it, and it also has a front and a back cover. Now, this is just one example of how it might work. You put pictures of people on each of the pages and then give them cards with descriptions of families on or family members, and you put those cards into the little pockets. There are lots and lots of other things, of course, that you would be able to do with these. Children could perhaps make them for a writing activity or swap them with friends for a reading activity. Now, something I like to do with Key Stage 1 is to make fans, because especially in the summer term, it's something that they always make anyway. And what you need to do is to get a piece of A4 paper, cut it in half lengthways, and then stick the two long strips together to make one big long strip, which they can then fold into a fan. And what we do is we write on it and illustrate lots of the words that we've been learning in year one and year two. And a resourceful teaching assistant that I had once did a brilliant display of all the fans that the children have made. Now, a variation on that theme is the concertina book. And a concertina, again, we use half a sheet of A4. So you fold it in half once, in half twice, in half a third time, and that gives you your 8 equal divisions. And again, I have a video on my YouTube channel which shows you how to do that. You can then write on all those little sections, except for the top one and the bottom one, because you're going to put glue on there. And these kinds of mini books are great for anything that requires a sequence. So, for example, it might be daily routine, which is what the little boy one is doing. It might be a recipe, for example. The rabbit here has got all the things that are in the magic bag, dans la sac magique. There's lots of other things that you can do with the concertina book as well. This one is a Christmas present, and when you open up the two halves, then you have the concertina inside. And we made these one year to send to the children in our Spanish partner school, and they liked them so much that they made some and sent them back to us as well. This is one I do with year two, and a big thank you to Rachel Smith for this because it was her idea. We study and sing the song of El Arca de Noé for Noah's Ark, and we make this ark, and the concertina is the steps, and we have the animals going up the steps into the ark. This is the one that I've been doing most recently. This is a French version. I've been doing it in Spanish, of course, with year five. Because they do space and the planets in science, I always do my planets unit with year five as well. And we make a concertina book with a planet on, and they do 6 different descriptions of 6 different planets, one on each step. Slightly different, but works on the similar sort of principle, is the Accordion book, where the cover and the pages are all in one, and you can also shape them. So this one is supposed to be a sandwich, and inside it's got all of the different ingredients. Although when I finished it, it looked a bit more like a burger than it did a sandwich. But basically, it's again folding a concertina of paper, cutting it slightly to shape it, and then writing inside. Now, another variation on the concertina or the accordion starts off life as a paper zigzag, which you then shape into houses and you cut the doors out as well. Now, as long as the doors are made big enough, there's plenty of scope for writing inside. And for this one, I'd recommend using card rather than paper because with normal paper, the doors start to go curly, especially if the children have coloured them in with felt tips. Again, a similar idea is the Line of People book. The cutting for this one is a bit more complex. I tried it with year 3 once, and I ended up making a template for them just to make it that bit easier. So imagine all the different information that you could put under the flap on each person. So for these people, they're saying what it is that they like to eat and what they like to drink on the flap on their tummies. Now, here's the Aztec Codex that I referred to before. It's essentially a concertina style book. The Aztecs filled their codices, which is the plural form, with their glyphs that were painted in red, blue, yellow, and green. And incidentally, there's a really interesting article about Aztecs and their language on the independent.co.uk website today. Nearly all of the Aztec codices were destroyed by the Spaniards when they conquered the area which is now Mexico in the early 16th century, and therefore there aren't a great many left. Um, the good thing about this paper version is that it's fun to make. It is one piece of A4 again, and you can write on both sides of it, and it actually gives you a very large area to write on. I've done these in the past with year 4 at the very end of year 4, and we do it as a summative piece, and they write for me. And in the past, it's been all about family and all about pets. So I said, really impressed me. What can you tell me about family and pets in your codex? Now, for a fan book, you get a group of identical shapes and fix them together with a butterfly pin. And for this one, as you can see, I got lots of heart shapes, and I just made those by using the shapes tool in Publisher. And of course, PowerPoint has the same tool as well. And you can see it's all about opinions. So things that you like, things that you don't like, fix them all together, and you can close the fan or open it up to show all of your work. So perhaps you could have house shapes for each one being a different room in the house, or an aeroplane, and you could describe a holiday on it, perhaps, just an idea. This is probably one of the most well-known mini-book formats, the Tryrama. It's essentially a 3D scene that is made out of a square of paper, and it's really good for writing about something that can be drawn in a long line. So it might be a row of people, a row of animals, places in town, as you can see, is what I use it for. Again, there is a video on my YouTube channel of how to make these and also my tips for how to get the very best effect. This is the one that I made to try it all out in French, but the children these days do some brilliant examples. And generally speaking, as long as you make your drawings quite tall, the 3D effect is really good. And also the children fill in as much of the white area as they can. We have some brilliant sunsets, we have mountains. They do a really, really good job. The only problem with these is that because they're triangular, they're really hard to display. So if you did want to display these, I would recommend sticking 2 back to back, and then you get a flat surface that you can put onto your display board. Then Something that looks similar, it looks like two mini trioramas stuck together, is the foldable artist book. And I've done these in the past with year 5 when we were doing weather in French. And they just had to write 4 sentences, like you can see here, giving the day, the date, the place, and what weather it was as well. These can also be stuck back to back as well to make them easier to display. Then there is the diorama. This has got a large area, as you can see, to write and draw on. And if you're feeling really, really brave, this is a complicated fold, then you can also do a foldable map. My husband once went on a business trip to Madrid, so I bought him one of those little pocket fold outable maps to take with him. And this works on a very similar sort of basis. I've used them in year 6 to practice the places of names in town to say what is there and what isn't there. And some of the girls made the outside of their map into a house because when you fold it all up flat, it comes out as that shape. So you could perhaps use it to make a plan of the inside of a house once you open it up. Now, this is the lift the flap book, probably the most basic kind of a lift the flap book. It's really good for anything that involves questions and answers or pairs of words or words and pictures. So when we made these, we got an A4 piece of card. You fold it in half just so that you mark the center and then fold each side in and cut 4 different flaps. It's again quite surprising how many children can't cut 4 equal flaps. They end up cutting about 9 and wondering why it doesn't work. This one was done by Kate. Kate is now just about to finish her A levels, but she said when she did this that I could keep it and that I could show it. And we did these to practice telling the time. So you can see that Kate has drawn clocks on the outside, and then when you lift the flap, it says what the time is on that clock inside. This is another variation again on a flap book. This time I've got the shape and stuck the flaps on the top. When you lift them up, it says what the fat cat has eaten. Then this is a multiple lift the flap book where, and you can find the template for this if you go to the blog. And it basically has 3 different flaps to lift up, each flap getting slightly smaller. And then you've got a sheet on the back as well that you can write on. And we use this for when we were doing the then and now topic to write about our local area. Now, the envelope book is so called because it has an envelope stuck on one cover. And for this particular envelope book, I put lots of pictures of different people into the envelope. And then each page has a sentence about hair or eyes. So the first one you can see there says, J'ai les yeux bleus, I have blue eyes. Then the idea is children get out all the pictures from the envelope and they have to do a sort. So they've got to find all the pictures who have blue eyes. Then if they turn the page, it'll say something else. It might say, I have brown hair or I have blonde hair. So they have to sort all the pictures again to find the people who conform to that particular description. Again, think of all the different things that you could put into the envelope to match up with the pages of the book itself. Now, the Starburst, I won't say the idea for the Starburst, but the motivation to make the Starburst came to me during the Eurovision Song Contest one year, when again Rachel Smith sent me a picture and said, "Have you seen this? It looks really good." And so I found out how to make it. And while Eurovision was on, I sat and worked out how to make it and made this one. So again, it's quite a complicated fold, but it offers you a lot of space to write on. Each of these colors here is a square from an A4 piece of paper. You just cut off that bottom strip like for the Tryrama, and then you stick them effectively back to back. When it folds up into, and if you have a look at the brown bits, that's the cover, it folds up into just that little square. So they're quite neat and quite easy to store. But inside, there is a lot of space to write on. I always think these would be really good for putting together lots of children's work in one place. Then towers of learning, I think, are a useful tool for reference. So if the children are doing, say, an extended piece of writing, you can have one of these on each table as a reference. So I used this one when the children were learning the paradigm of the verb to go and saying, for example, he goes to the place in town by whichever transport. And we were having a go as well at putting in some of the time words that we'd used in previous years as well. So all of these, you can see it has the verb to go on one side, it has the days on another, and on the other two sides, there were places and transports as well, with examples on the little flaps that stick out from the bottom. And they had one of those on their table that they could then use to help them with their writing. Now, the Valentine mini books, not all of them, of course, are for Valentines, but the Valentine's one was the first that I made. Um, since then, I've also done ones for Christmas. So you've got the Christmas tree at the top. There's an Easter egg on the left-hand side, a star. You can use that how you like, and the smiley face, which might be good for opinions. And if you have a look in the bottom right-hand corner there, you can see what they look like when they're folded out. So you take the two halves of the shape and it helps you to open it out, and you have a little space for writing inside. Then another popular one is the hexagon book. Um, I've got a template for this on my blog. It's quite complex. The cutting children find quite complicated because you've got to cut around the outside of the, if you like, the flower shape, but then only cut from the edge to the edge of the central hexagon, if you like, and not all the way through. Then what you can do is put, I mean, you can see it's done with time again. It's a bit like a lift the flap book, is we had a clock on one side and then the time that that said on the inside. And then when you fold all of the hexagons in, it just is the size and shape of that central hexagon. Now, when I come to the end of year six and we're done places in town and the then and now topic, I was always looking for the ideal way for them to demonstrate all that learning. And one of the things that we tried one year was story towers. So these are made with blank postcards. I think card here definitely better than paper. And what you do is to stack them together is to measure 2 centimeters in from the corner and then cut a 2 centimeter slot. And then you slot the cards together to build the tower. So the idea was that we would put the illustration on the top and the description of the town underneath. And it kind of worked. I think I would probably like to have another go at these, maybe for something different. Now, people pillars are a result of a challenge from Janet Lloyd from the Primary Languages Network because she had been developing people pillar poems. Now, for the people pillar poems, you take a noun. So, for example, here it's un clown, it's a clown. And then you find lots of adjectives that you would use to describe that noun and create short phrases using your article, your noun, and your adjective. Or if it's French, it might be adjective, noun. And you write them in that column shape. And Janet challenged me to think of a creative way of displaying these pillar poems. So I came up with the template, which is basically, you can see the round head, then the lined part for the column, and then the little feet at the bottom. And the idea is that children can then make it exactly what they want. They can draw hair on, they can draw a hat on, and then at the end, cut it all out, stick it at the back, and they've got their people pillar. It'd be great to do something like this for personal description. Then the back to back to back book, you need a lot of identical symmetrical shapes. And again, for these symmetrical shapes, I used the shape function on MS Publisher, or you can use PowerPoint for the same thing as well. Because when they're folded in half lengthwise, you want the sides to be exactly the same. And then you stick one half to half of the other one to half of the next one and so on. And you can see the shape that it makes. So if we're thinking about display space is always at a premium, isn't it? And these are the sorts of things that perhaps you could hang from the ceiling. Now, many books don't have to be just on one piece of paper because there are ways of making your own small books for maybe giving to children who finish their work early or who fancy doing some reading in their own time as well. And these ones are made with some small photo albums that I got in the Staples sale. They were 50p each at the time. And the stories inside are printouts of stories that I made either in PowerPoint or also using Storybird and Storyjumper. If you haven't seen Storybird and Storyjumper, they are websites that you can use to make your own illustrated stories. So the left-hand side about Burbuja la Bruja, that is a PowerPoint story. Then the robot one and the alien one are Story Jumper, and the animals is Story Bird. So I hope that I've showed you lots of different kinds of mini books that you can use to encourage reading, to encourage independent writing and dictionary skills. And I hope that you enjoy having an experiment and also having a create of some of these different kinds of mini books.